We all know, everybody knows my voice.
So we're still on the South Lambeth Estate. I'm here with Drina and another resident talking about the way that residents have been treated and really the plans for South Lambeth going forward. What do you think's going on? If you two could please just give us a bit more information.
I think we've asked for something as basic as a timetable for years.
How many times?
And they have no idea what's going on. And all the issues that we face with phase one, which is this big block in front of Woodbourne House, we flagged as potential issues that we wanted to deal with before they started building. Yeah. And so that's having mitigation in place, reasonable adjustments, noise and dust quality, being able to get involved with the design of the actual building. We were asking about the boundaries as well, like how close is the phase one building going to be to Woodbourne House.
And it was about who's managing who, because they told us Lambeth are going to stay managing Woodbourne House and Homes for Lambeth are going to manage that block. So we said, who's going to manage the in-between? That was where the boundary issue came. Now they knew all that time ago that the boundary was right up here by our front door, and yet they let us believe that the boundary was over there all that time. And
what's the big dilemma now is that they want to crack on with doing phase two, which will be worse than phase one, because phase one was just building on an empty space. Phase two is going to be a demolition. They're unwilling to kind of learn and take from the lessons and all the mistakes they've made with phase one, and they just want to bulldoze over phase two and just knock it over and start moving people in. I think another one of our concerns is that whilst doing this, they chose not to. There's no engagement, no consultation, no discussion for years.
I've been asking because it said in the latest newsletter that there's been workshops throughout, on that little timeline, it said throughout 2022 there have been workshops with an S, plural, and consultations, plural, and all I can find is that one workshop that Paige Collins did, who's now left. And that was to do with phase two. So what are the consultations? I don't know whether they mean when people just turn up on a Tuesday and ask a question, is that considered a consultation?
It isn't considered a consultation because they have what they call dropping sessions in the green shop. But we were told point blank from the independent advisor and from the engagement officer that they were not allowed to engage at all. So they will sit in an empty shop for hours and do nothing at a time that wasn't even workable for most people.
And with no consultation, they spent £78,000 of Lambeth money on doing up the shop.
Oh, that's the famous £78,000. Yeah,
that's the famous green shop that remains closed for practically all of the week, apart from a chunk of hours, 11 to 4 when it's remained open. I think another one of our concerns, where they've done like some sort of fake consultation, is about the residents and how their mix across the different properties. Yeah. There's something called a local letting plan, and what we wanted to, as residents, is to be able to input in it. And what we sort of found by what they've proposed is that they're going to divide residents. So you're going to have a council block, you're going to have a shared ownership block, and then you're going to have a block where no council tenants or anything will be allowed to reside in. Yeah. And we're sort of saying, well, why are you splitting up the community? I mean, you've already sort of demolished the community. Why are you doing it?
I know, because they took us to that one that they'd had an input to in Kennington, and there was a stuff in the news about how the people in the what do you call the people in
poor doors?
Well, they weren't poor doors. They were the people in the council block weren't allowed to access the playground.
Yeah, I remember.
Because you had to go through the... Yeah. Well, they told us this was all going to be open plan, and yet, and I still would love to know how this is, because my daughter and I own our flat. It's a right to buy. And I woke up one morning, I wasn't told this, my bedroom is right at the end of the block, and my daughter goes in there to get away from the noise out the front, that started smashing up all the concrete blocks on that end of the thing. They've actually built a brick wall attached to my wall without telling me or asking my permission or agreement or whatever, and that wall is to stop people walking around the block. So they're actually enclosing that as their own little area.
I mean, when we sort of kicked off, we were given the impression that we were sort of key stakeholders and we were having a say.
They told us, it says in the planning permission, key stakeholders.
We've been inviting senior people from HFL, from every sort of level, to engage and to kick off engagement again, because we sort of want to, even if we're not, you're not going to give us a say, can we at least understand? Can you just imagine you're living in one of these blocks here, you have no information and you're seeing, buildings being smashed down, stuff being erected, and you don't have a single clue about what's going on. And even talking to personnel.
You weren't even told. In the low-rise blocks, they weren't even told about the demolition that was taking. So they'd all sort of suddenly come to and see all this massive equipment arriving and all this noise and whatever. You've got a lot of older people in that block who just didn't know what was going on.
It's strange because they did a qualities and impact assessment at the beginning, and people were reasonably amenable to the whole process. We had someone else come onto the estate at the beginning of this year and write an equalities and impact assessment, and he was just in awe about how the deterioration in the sentiment of residents and the quality of what's been produced by Lambeth and HFL. They were completely, absolutely...
Two sides having construction on both sides and all that constant noise. During lockdown, I had upstairs, we've got surgeons, people who work in A&E, who were working in COVID wards and couldn't sleep because they'd come home, they're doing shift, they couldn't sleep here because the noise is so bad. I know another chap that used to sleep somewhere way up near his work, up near Sydenham, because he couldn't sleep here on his day off because they couldn't get any time.
Yeah, but Lambeth and HFL are sort of well aware of the ramifications. I think they intentionally brought this, decided to target the estate because when they did the equalities and impacts, they know it was a bunch of elderly people, a bunch of sort of maybe migrant sort of workers, and so they're easy to target.
People who aren't digitally, they knew.
Because their consultation, when they did the qualities and impact assessment, we sat in with residents, and this is the beginning of this year, and the guy who was commissioned to do the work sort of pointed out clearly that there are basic things that Lambeth and HFL can do starting from today that they should be doing if they want to take positive steps forward. And what Lambeth and HFL have chosen to do instead is to sit on the report and not publish it. So they know very well what they're doing is incorrect. And they've now taken this sort of vow of silence where they're just refusing to engage or communicate with
They won't
residents.
come to our TRA meeting. I didn't know that they could refuse. I'm very confused. But Lambeth and Homes for Lambeth, we've got it in writing that they said, and it's based on, weirdly, they've based that on...
sort of an incorrect accusation about...
Apparently, there's an accusation. It's all confusing because on one hand we were told it was an anonymous. Tim Fairhurst said in his response that it was an anonymous accusation and that in hindsight they should have investigated it before they took action. But on the other hand, the other woman, the RPO, she said very clearly it was more than one. There were at least two, and she had emailed the people who made the complaint, and she said if they don't get back to us by return email, we're going to drop the charge. What?
This is something.
Who was it against?
Me.
Yeah.
And the TRA.
It was against
it. Said the TRA. It said that I was running disruptive TRA meetings.
Well, it's not the only estate where something like this has happened. I'm going to stop there for just a second.
Yeah, I bet.